Patricia, we need to discuss your financial future before this family celebration goes any further. Amanda's voice cut through the champagne laughter of my son's engagement party like a scalpel through sterile gauze, each word precisely calculated to wound. It was 7:42 p.m., the mountain snow falling soft and silent outside my cabin windows. I marked the time the way nurses mark medication schedules: precise, permanent, protecting lives. The notarized envelope lay hidden in my bedroom dresser upstairs, thick with legal documents that would soon expose everything Amanda had been planning while pretending to plan a wedding. If only she knew what protection looks like, I thought, watching my future daughter-in-law survey my home like a real estate appraiser calculating equity. Sometimes the most dangerous predators are those who smile while measuring your worth. My name is Patricia. I'm 58. And until this moment, I'd believed my son Ryan's engagement to Amanda was the blessing our mountain town family had been praying for. I've worked as head nurse at Aspen Valley Medical Center for 34 years, saving lives and managing crises, but nothing had prepared me for the systematic financial manipulation disguised as family planning. The December wind rattled the windows of my log cabin home, pine-scented air mixing with the warmth from my stone fireplace to create what should have been the perfect engagement celebration atmosphere. The mountain cold slid through the door frames like an unwelcome truth. Instead, the evening felt like a hostile takeover disguised as family joy. Amanda, tonight is about celebrating Ryan's happiness, I replied, setting down my wineglass with deliberate care. Financial discussions can wait until after the holidays. Which is exactly the problem. She gestured toward my modest but comfortable furnishings with the authority of someone who'd already decided my lifestyle was inadequate. Ryan and I have been discussing your situation, and we're concerned about your ability to manage retirement planning on a nurse's salary. My situation. The phrase tasted bitter in my mouth, as if 34 years of financial responsibility had suddenly become evidence that I needed help. I wasn't angry. I was taking inventory. The smell of pine logs burning in my fireplace filled the room. 30 years of home ownership creating the kind of peace that money can't buy, but apparently money could threaten. Amanda's nose wrinkled slightly, as if the rustic charm offended her urban sensibilities. The most devastating attacks often come wrapped in concern for your well-being, delivered by people who've already calculated what your destruction will cost them. I appreciate your concern, I said carefully, but I've been managing my finances successfully since before you were born. That's what makes this conversation so necessary. Amanda's smile carried the practiced patience of someone delivering bad news she'd rehearsed. Ryan tells me you've been resistant to financial advice. We think it's time someone with more expertise took over the complicated decisions. Someone supposedly smarter than me. At 26, Amanda had graduated with a marketing degree and worked for a Denver firm that specialized in lifestyle branding. Apparently, this qualified her to manage the retirement savings of a woman who'd been budgeting medical supplies during life-or-death emergencies for over 3 decades. The sound of footsteps on my front porch announced the arrival of extended family, and I realized Amanda had timed this conversation for maximum pressure. Nothing hurts quite like being diminished in your own home while an audience assembles to witness your replacement. I think there's been a misunderstanding, I began, but Amanda's laugh cut me off like a door slamming shut. Oh, Patricia, there's no misunderstanding. Ryan and I have researched the best investment strategies for someone in your position. We're prepared to take over the burden of financial management so you can focus on enjoying your retirement years. Handle what I apparently couldn't. My life savings had become too complicated for me to manage, requiring younger, smarter intervention rather than the security I'd earned through decades of 12-hour shifts and careful planning. As voices grew louder outside, Ryan's cousins arriving from Denver, my sister pulling into the driveway with her famous apple crisp, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of defending my financial competence in my own living room, I would let Amanda reveal exactly who she was. If that's what you think is best, I said quietly, then we should probably involve my financial advisor in this conversation. The look of triumph in Amanda's eyes was so complete, so satisfied, that I almost felt sorry for what was coming. Almost. But as I walked toward my bedroom to retrieve the notarized envelope from my dresser drawer, I felt something much more powerful. The calm that comes from knowing exactly what legal protections I'd put in place. Patterns tell the truth long before people do. So why was I smiling as I heard Amanda explaining my cognitive decline to my arriving family members? The Aspen Valley Medical Center, where I've worked for 34 years, sits at 8,200 feet elevation, close enough to the ski slopes that I can see the chairlifts from my office window on clear days. Some people think nurses are natural caregivers, but the truth is, we're professional protectors, trained to recognize threats before they become emergencies and document everything that might save lives later. If you've ever felt like someone was rewriting your story while pretending to care about your future, you already understand why I kept every financial document and recorded every conversation that came next. If that sentence found you, you already know why I kept the camera in my mind rolling and my mouth closed. My late husband Tom bought this cabin in 1992, back when Aspen Valley was just a small mountain town that tourists drove through on their way to Vail or Aspen. We raised Ryan here, taught him to ski on the local mountain, and built the kind of life where financial security came through hard work rather than manipulation of others. Real wealth is built through service, not schemes. Tom died 6 years ago of a sudden heart attack during a January blizzard, leaving me with mortgage-free property, a solid pension fund, and the kind of loneliness that makes you grateful when your son brings his new girlfriend home for holidays. Amanda arrived in Ryan's life like fresh powder after a long, dry spell. She was everything I'd hoped for in a daughter-in-law: educated, ambitious, and seemingly devoted to my son. Her marketing degree from University of Colorado impressed me, and her work at a Denver lifestyle branding firm suggested creativity and success. Kindness is my nature. Silence is my strategy. Mom, Amanda really wants to understand our family's financial planning approach, Ryan had said during their first visit last Christmas. She's excited about helping us build generational wealth. She wanted to help us build generational wealth. The phrase had made me happy then, conjuring images of financial wisdom passed down, grandchildren benefiting from compound interest, and a daughter-in-law who would help secure our family's future rather than threaten it. The early signs were subtle enough to dismiss: Amanda's questions about my retirement timeline, her suggestions about optimizing my investment portfolio, her habit of steering conversations toward my age and the challenges of managing finances alone as a widow. "You know what mountain towns need?" she'd said during her first summer visit, gazing out at the valley where generations of families had built modest but sustainable lives. Sophisticated financial planning services. Someone who understands how to maximize retirement assets for rural professionals. I'd assumed her interest was generous, that she wanted to see me thrive financially. Now I wondered if she'd been surveying assets she planned to control. Sometimes the people who promise to secure your future are actually calculating how to access your past. Ryan's transformation had been gradual but undeniable. The son who used to call me twice a week now texted occasionally. The man who once brought me flowers on Mother's Day now sent gift cards because Amanda coordinated social obligations. The boy who used to help me split firewood now hired services and sent me the bill. Amanda thinks you'd be happier in one of those nice senior living communities near Denver, he'd mentioned casually last month. Better medical care, more social opportunities, professional financial management. When had Ryan become so worried about my social life? I'd wondered, but hadn't voiced the question. At 58, I wasn't ready to be managed like an aging relative whose independence no longer mattered. Last Mother's Day, he texted me a digital gift card. He used to hand me peonies from the yard, dirt still clinging to the stems. Progress, they call it. Distance is another word for it. Standing in my bedroom now, holding the notarized envelope that contained legal documents Amanda couldn't manipulate, I thought about the conversation I'd overheard last week when Ryan thought I was in the garage. Once we get her settled somewhere with professional oversight, Amanda had been saying into her phone, we can really optimize these mountain assets. The location is perfect for vacation rental income, and the equity could fund a much better investment strategy. We can really optimize these mountain assets. As if 30 years of memories weren't valuable enough. As if the home where Tom proposed wasn't worth preserving. As if the cabin where I'd raised Ryan wasn't meaningful beyond rental income calculations. The voices downstairs were getting louder, family members arriving to discover that the engagement celebration had been invaded by financial planning discussions. I could hear Amanda explaining my situation to relatives who'd driven through mountain snow to celebrate love, not dissect my retirement readiness. Patricia's been struggling with the complexity of modern financial management, she was telling my sister, so Ryan and I thought it would be better if we simplified her decision-making process. Struggling with complexity. I'd managed medical supply budgets during equipment shortages, coordinated staffing during emergencies, and saved enough money to own my home outright while maintaining an investment portfolio that most people my age would envy. The notarized envelope felt warm in my hands, thick with legal protections that Tom and I had established years ago, but that Amanda had never seen. Our financial advisor's signature, the bank's official seal, the power of attorney restrictions that made her plans impossible. So why was Amanda so confident that she could redesign my financial life without my informed consent? Where exactly do you think I'm going to live while you optimize my assets? My sister Karen's voice carried through the house with the authority of someone who'd been managing family finances since we were teenagers. I heard it from my bedroom and knew immediately that Amanda's careful presentation had encountered its first obstacle. Oh, there are wonderful senior communities near Denver, Amanda replied, her tone maintaining its practiced sweetness. Much better medical care than what's available in mountain towns, plus social activities designed for people Patricia's age. Senior communities. People my age. At 58, I was apparently ready for assisted living because Amanda had decided that mountain independence was inappropriate for someone approaching Medicare eligibility. The sound of more car doors slamming outside announced the arrival of extended family, and I realized Amanda had orchestrated this moment for maximum leverage. Nothing reveals character quite like watching how people behave when they think they have permission to redesign someone else's life. And who decided Patricia was ready for assisted living? Karen continued, her nurse training evident in the methodical way she was building her interrogation. Well, Ryan and I have been discussing her situation with financial advisors, Amanda explained, her voice taking on the careful patience of someone talking to someone slow to understand. The consensus is that someone Patricia's age shouldn't be managing complex investment decisions alone. Financial advisors. The consensus. Amanda was presenting professional opinions I'd never heard and consensus from experts I'd never met about decisions that were entirely mine to make. I listened from upstairs as Amanda's voice took on an edge. Modern retirement planning requires expertise that most people my generation simply don't have. We're offering to handle the complicated aspect so she can enjoy her golden years without stress. Nothing reveals manipulation quite like listening to someone explain why your capabilities are insufficient while they're standing in the home those capabilities built. I've been managing my finances successfully for 40 years, Karen said immediately. What specific expertise does a 26-year-old marketing major have that a career nurse lacks? Amanda's hesitation revealed that she'd been unprepared for specific challenges to her assumed authority. Well, generational differences in financial literacy, investment strategies that weren't available when Patricia started saving, modern approaches to wealth management. What modern approaches? Karen's follow-up question carried the sharp precision of someone who'd spent decades questioning doctors' orders and demanding evidence for treatment decisions. The house had gone quiet now, relatives sensing that this conversation had moved beyond engagement celebration into something more serious. I heard Ryan's cousin Dave setting down his beer bottle, and my neighbor Mrs. Henderson shifting uncomfortably in what I assumed was my favorite armchair. Complex portfolio diversification, Amanda said defensively, tax optimization strategies, estate planning that maximizes inheritance benefits. Every phrase was perfectly crafted to sound professional, while containing no specific information that could be challenged or verified. Amanda's marketing background was evident in her ability to use impressive terminology without making concrete claims. "And you learned these strategies where, exactly?" Karen asked. The silence stretched long enough for everyone to realize that Amanda couldn't provide credentials that justified dismantling a nurse's retirement planning in her own living room. "I have a business degree from CU Boulder," Amanda said finally, "and I work with financial optimization in my marketing career." Financial optimization in marketing. The phrase revealed how thoroughly Amanda had conflated her professional experience with expertise she didn't actually possess. A knock on my front door interrupted the increasingly tense interrogation. "Patricia?" Ryan's voice, uncertain and younger sounding than usual. "Can I come talk to you for a minute?" "It's your family's house, too," I replied from my bedroom, testing the loyalty Amanda had been systematically undermining for months. He entered looking uncomfortable, like someone delivering news he didn't want to share. The 31-year-old man who'd called me his best friend throughout childhood now stood in my doorway, as if he were visiting a stranger whose decisions required his approval. "Amanda mentioned you were feeling overwhelmed by financial planning," he began, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "Maybe it would be easier if we handled the investment management while you focused on enjoying retirement." "Maybe it would be easier." My son was suggesting I surrender control of my life savings because his fiancée had convinced him that financial responsibility was too complex for his mother to handle. "Ryan," I said carefully, "do you think I'm incapable of managing my own money?" He looked genuinely conflicted, caught between his fiancée's narrative and 31 years of evidence that his mother was competent, capable, and financially responsible. "It's not that you're incapable, Mom. Amanda just has experience with investment strategies that could really help us build wealth for the future." Us. Our future. Ryan had been convinced that my financial independence was selfishness that prevented collaborative family wealth building. "When did you decide that my financial management needed Amanda's improvement?" "I didn't decide anything." Amanda explained how much more we could accomplish if we coordinated our financial planning instead of everyone making individual decisions. The room was warm. The words were cold. Looking at my son, really looking at him, I saw someone who'd been convinced that love meant surrendering his mother's independence to someone who'd been planning to profit from that surrender. The notarized envelope lay on my dresser, legal protection that would soon reveal exactly how much Amanda's coordination would cost our family and who would actually benefit from the wealth management she was so eager to provide. So why did Ryan look like someone who'd realized he'd been recruited for something he didn't understand? The advantage of being a nurse is that you learn to assess quietly, to gather information without drawing attention to yourself. People assume nurses are simply caregivers, which makes them excellent witnesses to behavior that others might miss or dismiss as normal family dynamics. From my bedroom window, I watched Amanda's BMW navigate the icy mountain roads with the confidence of someone who'd been visiting frequently enough to know the terrain. The expensive car looked out of place against the backdrop of pickup trucks and Subarus that belonged to our mountain community, but Amanda had never seemed concerned about fitting into local culture. The most dangerous assessments are the ones that treat your entire life as data points in someone else's business plan. My laptop sat open on my desk, and muscle memory guided my fingers to social media, the digital space where people document their own betrayals without realizing they're creating evidence. Amanda's Instagram painted a picture I'd been too trusting to analyze carefully before. 3 weeks ago, excited to help family with some major financial planning. Sometimes you have to step in when people you love need guidance. Core family. First, financial planning, hashtag mountain life. Help family with financial planning, not collaborate or support. Help, as if I were a charity case requiring her intervention. 47 likes, including one from Ryan. 2 weeks ago, looking at gorgeous Denver properties with my amazing fiancé, dreams of consolidating family assets into something really special. Denver. Real estate, Hanukkah, family, wealth. Durchurch next chapter. Consolidating family assets. My mountain cabin had apparently been reclassified as a family asset available for consolidation into Amanda's Denver real estate dreams. 1 week ago. Sometimes loving someone means making difficult decisions for their well-being. Not everyone appreciates being helped, but family does what's necessary. Tough love. Sa, family responsibility. Cha, financial wisdom. Making difficult decisions for their well-being. The clinical language made it sound like I was being moved to hospice care rather than being manipulated out of financial independence. The comments on this post revealed conversations I wasn't supposed to see. Jessica Denver. You're so mature to take on that responsibility. Is she being resistant? Amanda. Very resistant, but that's typical when cognitive function starts declining. We're working with professionals who understand how to help seniors transition gracefully. I archived the moment and let the scene play. What I read painted a picture of Amanda presenting my financial management as elder abuse requiring intervention. Every question I'd asked about her qualifications had been reframed as evidence of defensive behavior, typical in seniors experiencing cognitive decline. Sometimes the most sophisticated fraud involves convincing everyone that the victim's protests are actually symptoms of the very incapacity being used to justify the crime. Her social posts weren't about family, they were brand updates. Even her empathy came with a curated filter. A text message thread between Amanda and someone named Michelle C.O. appeared in the preview notifications. Michelle C.O. How's Operation Mountain Money going? Amanda. Better than expected. She's so resistant that it's actually making our case stronger. Ryan completely believes she needs help now. Michelle C.O. When do you get access to the accounts? Amanda. Working on it this week. Poor old thing doesn't understand that fighting us just proves she's not competent to manage alone. Operation Mountain Money. My displacement had a code name and a strategy, complete with my son as an unknowing accomplice who thought he was protecting his mother from financial complexity. The notarized envelope lay next to my laptop, and I photographed it along with Amanda's social media evidence. Legal proof of the financial protections Tom and I had established, captured with metadata that would show today's date and time, alongside documentation of Amanda's systematic campaign to override my legal rights. I counted, not confronted. Downstairs, the sounds of family gathering continued, Amanda directing conversation about my situation, Ryan explaining my supposed resistance to helpful financial advice, relatives trying to understand why an engagement party had become an intervention about my retirement planning. Patricia has been showing signs of confusion about modern financial management, Amanda was telling someone, probably my neighbor Mrs. Henderson, based on the concerned murmur that followed. We're just trying to help her transition to a more appropriate level of oversight. But the most revealing evidence was hiding in plain sight on Amanda's LinkedIn profile, accessible through her Instagram business link. Her current employment wasn't with a Denver lifestyle branding firm, as I'd been told. According to professional networking data, Amanda worked for Mountain Asset Management LLC, a company that specialized in retirement community transitions and estate optimization. Mountain Asset Management. Amanda's job wasn't marketing lifestyle brands. Her job was convincing elderly property owners to surrender financial control to professional management companies that charged substantial fees for services that benefited the managers more than the clients. The room applauded the food. I memorized the lies. Now everything made sense. The professional terminology, the sophisticated manipulation techniques, the systematic way she'd been undermining my confidence while building a case for intervention. Amanda hadn't fallen in love with my son and accidentally discovered concerns about my finances. She was a professional who specialized in exactly this kind of family financial manipulation. So why had she chosen our family as her target? And how long had she been planning to use Ryan's love as access to my mountain property and retirement savings? Amanda, let's discuss your actual job qualifications for managing my retirement funds. My voice carried clearly across the living room as Karen and I descended the stairs, cutting through the polite murmur of engagement conversation like a scalpel through infected tissue. The relief in my relatives' faces was unmistakable. They'd been waiting for me to address the financial intervention that had invaded my family celebration. The scene before me was surreal. My living room transformed into something from a financial planning seminar, complete with Amanda's laptop open to what appeared to be retirement community brochures and investment transfer forms. My family sat around my stone fireplace, listening to explanations about my supposed cognitive decline instead of celebrating Ryan's engagement. Patricia, there you are. Amanda's voice carried forced brightness, like someone delivering a performance she'd rehearsed. We were just explaining to your family how excited we are to help optimize your financial future. Optimize your financial future. The clinical phrase felt foreign in my living room, where Tom and I had made financial decisions around this same fireplace for 30 years without requiring optimization by people young enough to be our children. Sometimes the most revealing moments come when someone's careful performance gets interrupted by unscripted questions about their actual qualifications. That's thoughtful, I replied, taking my time to scan the room. Though I'm curious about your background in financial planning, when did you develop expertise in retirement fund management? The question hung in the air like smoke from my fireplace, creating exactly the kind of spotlight Amanda had been working to avoid. Several conversations stopped as my relatives realized I was challenging the authority of someone they'd assumed was qualified to redesign my financial life. Oh, I have extensive experience with financial optimization, Amanda replied smoothly, her marketing background evident in the way she deflected specifics with impressive-sounding generalities. My work focuses on helping families maximize their wealth-building potential. Extensive experience, wealth-building potential. Every phrase was designed to sound professional, without providing information that could be verified or challenged. Karen cleared her throat with the sound of someone preparing to cross-examine. What specific credentials do you have for managing retirement portfolios? The directness of the question created a ripple of silence around my living room. Amanda's practiced smile wavered slightly as she registered that Karen wasn't accepting vague assurances about financial expertise. Well, I have a business degree and professional experience with asset management strategies, Amanda explained, her voice taking on the careful patience of someone talking to someone not smart enough to understand complex concepts. Asset management for what type of clients? Families transitioning into retirement primarily. People who need help understanding modern financial instruments. The room had gone completely quiet now, everyone realizing this conversation had moved beyond engagement celebration into something that demanded their attention. Some rescues begin with letting the performance continue. Amanda, I said calmly, I looked up your employment information. You work for Mountain Asset Management LLC, not a lifestyle branding firm. The color drained from Amanda's face so quickly that several relatives leaned forward in concern. Ryan looked genuinely confused, his expression shifting between his fiancée and his mother as if watching a conversation in a language he didn't understand. I never said I worked for a branding firm, Amanda began, but Karen was ready with evidence that contradicted her claim. You told Patricia you worked in lifestyle branding in Denver, Karen interrupted. Ryan told me that specifically when you first started dating. Amanda's inability to explain the discrepancy between her claimed employment and her actual job revealed the first crack in the professional facade she'd been maintaining for months. There must be some misunderstanding about my job description, she said carefully. I do work in lifestyle optimization, which includes financial planning services. Lifestyle optimization. The euphemistic language was designed to obscure the fact that Amanda's company specialized in convincing elderly people to surrender financial control to professional managers who charged substantial fees for services their clients didn't need. What exactly does Mountain Asset Management do? Ryan's voice came out hoarse, revealing that he was learning about his fiancée's actual employment for the first time. Amanda's pause revealed everything before she spoke. We help seniors transition to appropriate financial oversight when family members are concerned about their decision-making capabilities. Appropriate financial oversight. Concerned about decision-making capabilities. The clinical terminology couldn't disguise the fact that Amanda's job was convincing families that their elderly relatives were incompetent, so professional managers could take control of their assets. You mean you convince families that their parents are too old to manage their own money, so your company can charge fees to manage it instead? Karen's question stripped away every euphemism Amanda had been using. The sound of my gas fireplace seemed to grow louder in the silence that followed, as my family realized that Ryan's engagement to Amanda had been a professional targeting rather than a romantic coincidence. I think you're misunderstanding our services, Amanda said desperately. We provide legitimate financial planning for families who need professional guidance. Guidance that requires transferring control of my assets to your company? Only when family members are concerned about cognitive decline or decision-making impairment. The notarized envelope felt solid in my pocket. Legal weight that would soon expose the impossibility of Amanda's plans and the protections Tom and I had established specifically to prevent this kind of professional manipulation. Amanda, I said quietly, I think it's time you explain to my family exactly how you identified me as a target for your company's services. So why did she suddenly look like someone who'd realized her operation had been discovered by the very person she'd been planning to victimize? I don't know what you're implying, Patricia. Amanda's voice had lost its professional confidence, replaced by the sharp defensiveness of someone whose systematic deception was being exposed in front of the people she'd been trying to manipulate. She gripped her wine glass like armor, knuckles white against the crystal. Show them your company's website, I said calmly. Show them the services Mountain Asset Management provides for concerned families dealing with elderly financial confusion. The blood drained from Amanda's face so completely that several relatives moved closer, unsure whether they were witnessing a medical emergency or a psychological breakdown. Ryan looked between his fiancée and his mother with the expression of someone watching his entire understanding of reality collapse in real time. Patricia, I think you're having some kind of episode, Amanda began, but Karen was already pulling up the company website on her phone. The truth has a weight that makes even the most sophisticated lies suddenly seem impossibly fragile. Here's their mission statement, Karen announced, reading directly from Mountain Asset Management's corporate page. Specializing in family intervention services for seniors experiencing financial decision-making impairment, professional assessment and transition management for elderly individuals requiring protective oversight. Ryan's phone hit the coffee table with finality that seemed to echo through my living room. Intervention services? Amanda, what the hell is this? I can explain everything. Amanda's voice rose desperately. I never intended for it to be professional. I genuinely care about Patricia's well-being. You targeted my mother through your job? Ryan's voice carried a devastation that made me want to comfort him, even though he'd been participating in my financial dismantling for months. The silence that followed was different from earlier discomfort. This was the silence of my family realizing they'd been witnessing a professional scam rather than genuine family concern. Nothing exposes sophisticated manipulation quite like reading its business model aloud to its intended victims. I met Ryan organically, Amanda protested. My feelings for him are completely genuine. The financial planning was just additional help I wanted to provide. You met him at a nursing conference where you were recruiting targets for elder financial abuse, I said clearly, producing my phone with screenshots of her LinkedIn networking activity. You've been documenting our family's assets since your second date. The evidence was overwhelming. Professional networking posts about identifying high-value mountain property owners, business conference attendance focused on senior financial transition services, and detailed social media documentation of my family's financial status that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with professional assessment. Ryan stood up abruptly, his movement sharp with betrayal and recognition. The questions about Mom's retirement timeline, the suggestions about moving closer to Denver, the concerns about her financial management, that was all market research? Amanda's tears looked genuine, but her words revealed the calculated nature of everything she'd been presenting as love and concern. I wanted to help her, Ryan. I could see she was struggling with modern financial complexity, and I knew my company could provide better oversight than she was managing alone. Modern financial complexity. Even caught in systematic deception, Amanda continued to pathologize my financial competence to justify her professional targeting. How much commission does your company earn for acquiring new clients? Karen asked with surgical precision. Amanda's inability to answer immediately revealed that the financial planning she'd been offering came with substantial professional profit rather than family benefit. It's not about commission, she said finally. It's about providing appropriate care for seniors who need protection from financial predators. The irony was staggering. Amanda worked for a company that convinced families their elderly relatives needed protection from financial predators while operating as exactly the kind of predator they claimed to guard against. The notarized envelope in my pocket contained legal documents that would end Amanda's targeting of our family. But first I wanted everyone to understand the full scope of what had been planned for my financial future. Amanda, I said quietly, show them the transfer documents you prepared for my investment accounts. Her laptop sat open on my coffee table, and her reluctance to display the prepared paperwork told everyone exactly how far her helpful financial planning had progressed. Ryan moved to the computer himself, his face cycling through disbelief, anger, and heartbreak as he scrolled through documents that would have transferred his mother's entire retirement portfolio to professional management that would benefit Amanda's company more than his mother's financial security. Power of attorney authorization, he read aloud, his voice growing hoarse. Asset transfer agreements, retirement account management contracts. Amanda, these documents would give your company control of everything Mom owns. The room was absolutely silent as my family realized they'd been witnessing the final stages of a professional financial scam disguised as an engagement celebration. I chose evidence over volume. The mountain property, her retirement accounts, even the life insurance Tom left her. Everything was going to be managed by professionals who would charge substantial fees while convincing our family that Patricia needed protection from her own financial decisions. Amanda's breakdown seemed genuine, but it was unclear whether she was devastated by exposure or by losing access to assets she'd been planning to control. I love him, she sobbed, looking at Ryan with what might have been authentic emotion. I love you. This wasn't supposed to be about the money. But it was about the money, Ryan said quietly, his voice carrying the finality of someone whose trust had been comprehensively shattered. Everything was about the money. The notarized envelope felt warm in my hand as I prepared to show my family the legal protections that would make Amanda's plans impossible and demonstrate exactly why Tom and I had been so careful about financial security, decades before we'd ever heard of Mountain Asset Management LLC. So, why did Amanda look genuinely shocked that there were consequences for using love as a weapon to commit elder financial abuse? The aftermath of revelation created the kind of silence that follows an avalanche, when everyone assesses damage and calculates what can be salvaged from the wreckage. Amanda had retreated to Ryan's truck, claiming she needed air, while my family processed the reality that they'd been witnessing systematic elder financial abuse disguised as engagement celebration. 34 years of nursing, Mom, Ryan said finally, his fingers tracing the embossed seal on documents Amanda had prepared without my knowledge. You've been protecting people your entire career. How did you recognize what was happening before the rest of us did? Protecting people. The phrase reminded me that professional training doesn't just teach you to help, it teaches you to recognize when help is actually harm, when concern is actually predation, when someone claiming to save you is actually planning to destroy your independence. Sometimes the strongest protection you can build is the one that makes predators realize they've chosen the wrong target. Karen had taken charge of organizing our family response, quietly coordinating with my neighbor Mrs. Henderson and Ryan's cousins to ensure everyone understood the scope of Amanda's deception. The mountain community had rallied around one of their own, protective instincts activated by witnessing someone target a neighbor who'd spent decades caring for their families during medical emergencies. I need to call my financial advisor, I said, retrieving Margaret Walsh's business card from my contact list. If Amanda's company has been researching my assets and preparing transfer documents, I want to know whether they've attempted any unauthorized activities. The notarized envelope lay open on my coffee table now, revealing the legal protections Tom and I had established 15 years ago when we'd first become concerned about elder financial scams targeting mountain property owners. Colorado mountain real estate had become increasingly valuable, making longtime residents attractive targets for various forms of financial manipulation. The most dangerous predators are those who use professional credentials to disguise systematic targeting as helpful family intervention. Margaret answered immediately, her voice carrying the crisp authority of someone who'd been protecting family assets in mountain communities for 40 years. Patricia, dear, how's the engagement party going? I need you to run a security check on all my accounts, I said, stepping into my bedroom for privacy. I've discovered that my son's fiancée works for a company that specializes in elder financial intervention, and they've been preparing unauthorized transfer documents. The pause that followed told me everything I needed to know before Margaret spoke. Patricia, I received 3 separate calls this week from Mountain Asset Management claiming they were conducting wellness checks on behalf of concerned family members. I told them all financial inquiries required your direct authorization and signature. 3 separate calls. While I'd been preparing for Ryan's engagement party, Amanda's company had been probing my financial institutions to assess exactly what assets were available for professional management. Did they identify specific concerns about my competence? They claimed to have documentation of cognitive decline and family requests for protective intervention. I told them that any competency concerns would require court proceedings, not private company assessments. Margaret, Amanda prepared power of attorney documents and asset transfer agreements without my knowledge. Is that legal? Another pause, longer this time. Preparing documents isn't illegal, but attempting to execute them without proper authorization would constitute financial fraud. Do you want to file a complaint with elder abuse authorities? After ending the call, I sat in Tom's old recliner, the worn leather chair where he'd managed our finances for 20 years, and felt the weight of how close I'd come to losing everything we'd built together. The legal protections we'd established weren't just financial. They were emotional, designed to prevent exactly the kind of family manipulation Amanda had been orchestrating. Our attorney had required family meetings, psychological evaluations, and multiple safeguards specifically to prevent anyone from using concern about my competence as justification for financial control. The documents are ironclad, I told Karen when I returned to the living room. Amanda's company can't access anything without court orders proving actual incapacity, not just claims from concerned relatives. The sound of Ryan's truck door slamming indicated that Amanda was returning from her strategic retreat, probably with new explanations for behavior that couldn't be explained away. "What do we do now?" Ryan asked, looking younger than his 31 years as he grappled with the reality that his engagement had been professional targeting rather than romantic coincidence. "Now we let Amanda explain exactly how her company identified our family as a suitable target," I said, checking my phone to ensure the recording app was activated. "And we document everything for the authorities who handle elder financial abuse. Mercy needs boundaries to survive." When Amanda entered my living room, her face showed the calculated composure of someone who'd spent her retreat developing new strategies rather than processing genuine remorse. She carried herself like a professional whose presentation had been interrupted rather than someone whose systematic deception had been exposed. "I want everyone to understand that I genuinely care about this family," she began, her voice taking on the therapeutic tone she'd been using to pathologize my financial independence. "Everything I've suggested has been motivated by love and concern for Patricia's well-being." The notarized envelope lay open between us like evidence in a trial, legal proof that would make her months of planning impossible to execute. "Amanda," I said calmly, "please explain to my family exactly how Mountain Asset Management trains employees to identify and target elderly clients." So why did she look like someone who'd realized her professional expertise was about to be cross-examined by someone who'd been documenting everything she'd assumed would remain hidden? The transformation was immediate and unmistakable. Amanda's carefully maintained facade of professional competence dissolved under direct questioning about her company's targeting methods, revealing someone who'd been trained to manipulate vulnerable families but hadn't prepared for cross-examination by informed victims. "I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about what Mountain Asset Management does," Amanda began, but her voice carried the defensive uncertainty of someone whose script had been exposed as performance rather than genuine concern. "Real authority doesn't need to announce itself. It simply reclaims its space with quiet documentation and legal protection." "Explain the misunderstanding," Karen said immediately, her nursing background evident in the way she refused to accept vague deflection when specific information was required. "Describe exactly how your company provides services that benefit elderly clients rather than generating profit from their assets." The question created a trap Amanda couldn't escape. Either admit that her company's business model involved profiting from elderly clients' assets, or provide evidence that Mountain Asset Management actually benefited seniors more than their own financial management. "We provide professional oversight for families concerned about cognitive decline," Amanda replied carefully. "Our fees are competitive with other financial management services." Our fees. The admission revealed what Amanda had been carefully avoiding. Mountain Asset Management charged substantial fees for services that clients didn't request and families didn't need. Ryan had been quiet throughout most of the confrontation, processing the systematic nature of his fiancée's deception, but Amanda's mention of fees activated protective instincts that overrode his emotional confusion. "What fees, Amanda? How much would your company charge to manage my mother's retirement funds?" Amanda's hesitation revealed that the financial planning she'd been presenting as generous help came with costs that would significantly reduce the assets she claimed to be protecting. "Management fees are calculated based on portfolio complexity," she said evasively. "Typically 2 to 4% annually, plus transaction fees for optimization services." 2 to 4% annually. Amanda's helpful financial management would cost me thousands of dollars each year for services I'd been providing for myself successfully for decades. That's $12,000 to $20,000 per year, Ryan calculated immediately, his voice carrying growing anger. You were planning to charge my mother $20,000 annually to manage money she's been managing competently on her own? Sometimes the most damning revelations come from simple arithmetic applied to sophisticated deception. The room had gone completely silent as relatives calculated how much Amanda's professional intervention would cost compared to the independent financial management I'd been providing successfully since Tom's death. Professional management provides security and optimization that individual oversight simply can't match, Amanda explained, her marketing background evident in her ability to present financial exploitation as premium service. Show us the optimization, I said calmly, opening my laptop to display my current investment portfolio. Explain exactly how your company's management would improve returns that are currently exceeding market averages. Amanda's inability to provide specific improvements revealed that her professional services were designed to generate fees rather than enhance client financial outcomes. Mountain Asset Management's business model required convincing elderly clients that their successful financial management was actually inadequate. The bank statements I'd prepared as evidence showed consistent growth, careful diversification, and strategic planning that contradicted every claim Amanda had made about my need for professional intervention. These returns are exactly what financial advisors try to achieve, Karen observed, reviewing investment data that demonstrated competent rather than declining financial management. What specific improvements would justify paying someone else $20,000 to replicate what Patricia is already accomplishing? Silence is not surrender, it's staging. Amanda's professional training hadn't prepared her for confrontation with documented evidence of successful financial management by the very person she'd been convinced was too impaired to handle complex decisions. Mountain Asset Management provides comprehensive services beyond simple investment management, she said desperately. Estate planning, tax optimization, succession planning for family wealth transfer. I have estate planning through my attorney, tax optimization through my accountant, and succession planning through legal documents you've never seen, I replied, pulling out the notarized envelope that contained protections Amanda couldn't override. The documents Tom and I had prepared 15 years earlier weren't just financial. They were legal barriers specifically designed to prevent exactly the kind of professional manipulation Amanda represented. Power of attorney restrictions, competency evaluation requirements, and family notification systems that made unauthorized asset transfers impossible. These protections require court-ordered competency evaluation before anyone can assume financial control, I explained, spreading legal documents across my coffee table like evidence in a trial. Amanda's company can't access my assets without proving actual incapacity, not just manufacturing family concern. The deed wasn't paper, it was memory with ink. Ryan picked up the legal documents with expressions that shifted from confusion to understanding to something approaching awe. You and Dad planned for this 15 years ago? We planned for anyone who might try to use age discrimination or family manipulation to steal what we'd built together. Amanda stood abruptly, her movement sharp with recognition that her months of planning had been designed to overcome protections that couldn't be overcome. I don't have to sit here and be attacked for trying to help this family. You're absolutely right, I said calmly. You can leave. My home is no longer available to someone who views my independence as an obstacle to professional profit. The sound of Amanda gathering her materials, laptop closing, paper shuffling, keys jingling, punctuated a silence that felt like justice beginning rather than celebration ending. Ryan, I said gently, you're always welcome here. But your engagement to someone who targeted our family for financial exploitation is over. So why did Amanda look genuinely shocked that systematic elder abuse had consequences that couldn't be marketing it away? The house settled into mountain quiet after my relatives had gone home, their goodbyes heavy with the shock of witnessing something that would change how we all thought about trust, love, and the predators who exploit both. Karen had lingered to help process the evening's revelations, but she'd finally driven back to Denver with instructions to call if I needed anything. Now it was just Ryan, Amanda, and me. Three people surrounded by the wreckage of an engagement party that had exposed systematic financial targeting disguised as family planning. "I can't believe you're destroying our engagement over a misunderstanding about my work," Amanda said, her voice alternating between professional authority and personal desperation. "Everything I suggested was motivated by genuine care for your financial security." Genuine care for your financial security. The phrase sounded hollow in my living room, where evidence of her company's fee structure still lay scattered across my coffee table like receipts for services I'd never requested. Love that requires surrendering your independence isn't love at all. It's acquisition wearing love's costume. "You prepared power of attorney documents without my knowledge," I replied steadily. "You researched my financial accounts through your company. You convinced my son that I was too impaired to manage my own retirement funds. Which part of that was motivated by care?" Ryan sat between us at my dining room table, his face carrying the exhaustion of someone whose worldview had been completely reconstructed in the space of a few hours. The man who'd trusted his fiancée's professional expertise about his mother's decline was now forced to recalculate every conversation, every suggestion, every gentle push toward decisions that had felt caring, but now revealed themselves as strategic manipulation. "Amanda," he said finally, "I need you to explain something to me. When you told me Mom was showing signs of confusion, what specific behaviors were you referring to?" The question hung in the air with legal precision. Ryan had inherited Tom's methodical nature, and now he was applying it to cross-examining his own engagement. Amanda's pause revealed everything. She'd built her case on professional assessment rather than observed behavior, expert opinion rather than evidence, psychological theory rather than documented decline. "It wasn't any single behavior," she said carefully. "It was a pattern of financial decision-making that suggested she might benefit from professional guidance." "What financial decisions?" "Resistance to investment optimization, reluctance to consider assisted living options, emotional attachment to property that could be generating better returns." "You mean refusing to let strangers manage her money, preferring to live in her own home, and valuing her life with Dad over rental income potential?" Ryan's voice carried real anger now, directed at the woman who'd convinced him that his mother's healthy independence was evidence of impairment. Sometimes the most devastating cross-examinations come from people who realize they've been used as weapons against those they love most. The notarized envelope still lay open on my table. 40-year-old legal protections that had proven Amanda's months of planning was based on fundamental misunderstanding of what could be taken and what was protected. "Your company targets elderly property owners, doesn't it?" I asked quietly. "Mountain communities with valuable real estate and residents who've been independent long enough to accumulate substantial assets." Amanda's response revealed the calculated nature of everything she'd presented as romantic coincidence and family concern. "Mountain Asset Management provides services for families in transition," she said defensively. "We help seniors access professional financial oversight when informal family management isn't sufficient." By convincing families that competent elderly relatives are incompetent? By providing professional assessment of situations where family members are concerned about cognitive decline or financial vulnerability? The clinical language couldn't disguise the reality that Amanda's company profited from manufacturing concerns about elderly competence to justify taking control of assets that were being managed successfully by their owners. Ryan looked at both of us with the expression of someone standing at a crossroads he'd never expected to navigate. His fiancée of 8 months, the woman he'd believed was helping care for his aging mother. His mother, the woman he'd been convinced needed protection from her own financial decisions. "Amanda," he said slowly, "when you started dating me, did you know about Mom's property value and retirement accounts?" The question exposed the heart of everything. Whether Ryan's relationship had been targeted from the beginning, or whether professional opportunity had corrupted genuine emotion. "I learned about your family's financial situation gradually," Amanda replied, her careful word choice revealing that she'd been assessing assets rather than simply getting to know her boyfriend's family. "That's not what I asked. Did you target me because of Mom's assets?" Amanda's inability to provide immediate denial told Ryan everything he needed to know about the foundation of their relationship. "I genuinely developed feelings for you," she said finally, "but I also recognized an opportunity to help your family optimize financial planning that could benefit everyone. Optimize financial planning that could benefit everyone." The euphemistic language meant Amanda's company would profit substantially, while convincing us that paying for services we didn't need was actually an investment in our family's future. The sound of wind through pine trees outside my cabin created the kind of mountain silence that makes truth impossible to avoid. Ryan had brought home someone who'd studied our family's vulnerabilities professionally, then systematically exploited his love to gain access to assets she'd been trained to acquire. "I want you to pack your things and leave," Ryan said quietly, his voice carrying finality that couldn't be negotiated. "This engagement is over." Amanda's tears looked genuine, but her arguments revealed that professional training had shaped even her emotional responses. "You're making a mistake that will cost your family thousands of dollars in missed optimization opportunities," she said, her desperation taking on corporate language even during personal crisis. "The only mistake I made was trusting someone whose job was elder financial abuse," Ryan replied. As Amanda gathered her belongings, laptop containing our family's financial assessment, business cards for services we'd never requested, engagement ring that had been purchased with assets she'd been planning to control, I felt the weight of how close we'd come to losing everything Tom and I had protected. The woman who'd almost convinced my son that love required surrendering his mother's independence was about to learn that some victories arrive whispering, through legal documents that can't be overcome, family bonds that can't be manipulated, and mountain community protection that doesn't tolerate predators disguising themselves as helpers. So why did the sound of Amanda's BMW driving away through mountain snow feel like the most beautiful music I'd ever heard? 6 months later, my cabin filled with familiar sounds of preparation as I organized the annual hospital fundraiser committee meeting. The same stone fireplace where Amanda had once tried to convince my family I was too impaired to manage my own finances now held carefully arranged materials for an event that would raise funds for new cardiac equipment. The notarized envelope had been returned to my bedroom dresser, no longer needed as evidence, but kept as reminder of what protection looks like when it's established before predators arrive, rather than after they've already begun their systematic targeting. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is showing them the difference between love that protects and manipulation that acquires. The fundraiser raised $87,000, Mrs. Henderson announced, reviewing the previous year's numbers. Patricia's organizational skills made it the most successful medical equipment drive in hospital history. Organizational skills, the same abilities Amanda had pathologized as evidence of cognitive decline, were now being celebrated as community assets that saved lives through medical equipment funding. Ryan appeared in my kitchen doorway as committee members gathered their papers, his face carrying the peace of someone who'd chosen difficult truth over comfortable deception. He'd moved back to the mountain after ending his engagement, taking a teaching position at the local elementary school that kept him close to family, but independent enough to rebuild his sense of himself outside Amanda's professional manipulation. "How did the meeting go?" he asked, accepting the cup of coffee I'd prepared without being asked, a small ritual that had survived the earthquake of Amanda's targeting. $87,000 raised for cardiac equipment, I reported. Apparently, my declining organizational abilities managed to coordinate the most successful fundraiser in hospital history. The gentle irony in my voice made him smile, but it also carried the weight of lessons learned about trusting professional assessment over observed evidence. I got a call from the district attorney's office today, Ryan said, settling into his father's chair at my kitchen table. Mountain Asset Management is being investigated for elder financial abuse in 3 Colorado counties. 3 counties. Amanda's targeting of our family hadn't been isolated incident, but part of systematic professional predation that exploited family relationships to gain access to elderly assets across multiple mountain communities. The strongest justice often comes not from personal victory, but from protecting others who haven't yet recognized they're being targeted. How many families were involved? At least 12 that they've identified so far. Apparently, Amanda specialized in targeting medical professionals and teachers, people with modest but substantial retirement savings who might not seem wealthy enough to attract obvious financial predators. The strategy was sophisticated. Target professional families with accumulated assets but without ostentatious wealth. Use romantic relationships to gain access to family financial information. Then manufacture concerns about elderly competence to justify professional intervention that generated substantial fees while appearing to provide protective services. Have any charges been filed? Elder abuse, fraud, conspiracy. Amanda's cooperation with the investigation reduced her charges to misdemeanor financial exploitation, but Mountain Asset Management lost its license and several executives are facing felony prosecution. The winter light filtered through my kitchen windows, illuminating the space where Tom and I had planned financial protections that saved me from losing everything we'd built together. The legal documents that had seemed excessive when we'd prepared them 15 years earlier had proven exactly sufficient when someone like Amanda arrived disguised as helpful family planning. I keep thinking about how close we came, Ryan said quietly. If you hadn't been documenting everything, if you hadn't had those legal protections, if I hadn't finally started asking the right questions. But we did have protections, and you did ask questions, and the system worked the way it was designed to work. Because you and Dad were smarter about predators than I was about predators disguising themselves as people who loved me. The mountain evening embraced my cabin with the contentment of a structure that had survived assault and emerged stronger. My kitchen, my financial independence, my family relationships, all intact despite sustained professional targeting designed to exploit the very love that ultimately protected us. Ryan's laughter during our coffee conversation carried the genuine warmth of someone who'd learned to distinguish between care that empowers and manipulation that acquires, between concern that strengthens and professional intervention that profits. The victim's assistance coordinator said something interesting, Ryan continued. She said that families who go through what we went through usually end up with stronger relationships afterward because they've learned to tell the difference between manipulation that exploits love and support that actually honors independence. We learned the difference between help that builds and help that takes. And I learned that questioning someone's concern isn't disrespectful if that concern requires surrendering your autonomy. 3 life lessons had emerged from the wreckage of Ryan's engagement. First, professional credentials don't justify personal manipulation, they make it more dangerous. Second, love that requires surrendering your independence isn't love, it's acquisition. Third, the strongest protection is preparation that anticipates predators rather than hoping they won't arrive. The mountain night settled around my home with the satisfaction of survival. My cabin, my financial security, my family bonds, all protected by planning that had seemed excessive until it became essential. Some victories arrive whispering. So why did the sound of Ryan's honest laughter in my kitchen feel like the most beautiful confirmation that we'd chosen dignity over exploitation, protection over profit, and family loyalty over professional manipulation? Dignity doesn't clap. It simply stays. The end.